States, we've got Dr. Daniel Reis, a founding partner of Reis Pellicano in Lisbon. We're going to talk about the legalities of purchasing property in Portugal. We've talked a lot about buying, finding the property, where to buy it, and what sort of property to buy and so on. But actually, there's quite a lot more comes once you've owned it, once you've made the decision to buy. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Director Carl Munson, who will host tonight's show. Thank you, Carl.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Astrid. That feels like it's raised the stakes a bit. Good evening to you, Daniel. Great to have you back. How are you?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm all right. And congratulations for being the newly director. So
well, thank
it's
you.
quite a positive news.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Let's say hello to a few people before we get cracking. It's really great to be speaking to you again. Really enjoyed the last webinar we did. We have Alex from Virginia, Clive, not Claire, from Durban, from Washington State. Linda is here. Jenny and George from Devon in the UK. Hi there. Anna and Roger from Sweden. But now in Alentejo looking for property, so perfect timing for them. Michelle is in Southern California, and good evening to everyone. Pilar and myself are in Kuwait. Good evening to you both, that's fantastic. Richard, hi Richard, in Maui, and congratulations to me, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Hi from Switzerland, from Anna. Fabio is in Lisboa, and Mari in Los Angeles. Feel free, folks, to say who you are and where you are. It's lovely to hear about your location for the webinar tonight. First thing I've got to ask you, Daniel, is we're now into the first day. We're back in the state of calamity in Portugal. You're in the capital. What's the atmosphere like there right now?
Well, I do think it's more or less the same as it was on the previous months. You do see a lot of people wearing masks in the street, in public places. The new cases went up, but the public health system is handling it well. They're not overbooked. They don't have the staff yet in the health system, at least the public health system, too tired, and the hospitals are still accepting new sick people. So I don't think things are going more or less all right. The reaction was expected because we had a spike in new cases, but I do think that although the cases went up, the situation is controlled, and it's still a safe country to be in. So that's my perspective.
Good news, excellent, excellent. And before we get into the questions, please, why wait, everybody? If you've got questions, if you've got your dream home or close to it, and you need to know the legalities, put those questions in the chat right now, and we'll get them to Daniel. But it might be good for you to set the scene, Daniel. Tell us about your law firm just a little bit.
Well, we incorporated a law firm 2 years ago, well, give or take 2 years ago. I've been a lawyer in Portugal for the past 8 years, give or take. And with the boom of expats in Portugal and foreigners wanting to come and live in Portugal, I've been providing services to foreigners here. Usually what our clients want is how to migrate to Portugal, or how to acquire property in Portugal, or how to incorporate in Portugal. So we do serve a lot of entrepreneurs as well as the Gold Visa program. So those are the things that we usually take care here in our office, and we are directed mainly to foreign clients.
Okay, excellent. And I'm guessing business is pretty good at the moment.
Well, it is. It is. Although when the pandemic started and the flights all closed down, it was a moment where working with foreigners was in peril, I think. But although the restrictions are still up and a lot of people can't still enter Schengen space, I thought in the beginning that this would be quite difficult, or a lot more difficult than it is, and we haven't seen any decrease on the clients coming. So I do think it's good, and Portugal is still seen as a good place to invest and a good place to acquire property comparing to the rest of Europe, because of the climate and because of the prices. They are still good for foreign investors. So that's my sum of the last 6 months. I was expecting quite a big downturn, but it wasn't that bad. In fact, it's been a normal year, let us say.
Amazing. That's really good news. Thank you for
Yeah.
setting the scene there. We can begin, I think, with the 5 simple steps, and then it can get more complicated after that, can't it? So in essence and in theory, it's quite simple, and you've got a 5-step guide for us to kick off with before those questions start coming through. So yeah, take it away, please.
Well, to acquire property in Portugal, the first thing that you need to obtain is a NIF, NIF. It's a tax number, and it can be obtained via power of attorney. You don't even need to come to Portugal. So it's usually the first step that we do is take care of our client's NIF with the client still in their own country. And then the client, we have been managing to open bank accounts online as well. That's the second step that is necessary to acquire property. And with the pandemic, fortunately, banks have relaxed on their prerequisites to open bank accounts. So they just send the documentation, you sign it abroad, and then you mail it back to the bank, and voila, you do have a bank account open. And this is quite easy comparing to before the pandemic. Then it starts with the property hunt. You should speak with a few real estate agents. You should get a good connection with a real estate agent because they can be quite helpful with the property that you are that you want to acquire. And I do think that people should be really straightforward with the broker. They should state the conditions, the maximum price that they want to go up to, and they should try to see as many properties as possible, because there are still a lot of properties in the market. And as we at the moment are not having so many people entering the country, I do think that prices they didn't rise as much as expected. So I do think it's a good time to acquire property here in Portugal. You do have one step once you find the property that you want, is a property reservation. That's usually done with the broker, and it's usually money handed in to the broker, to the real estate agent, and they usually keep the money, so they secure the deal. But in my perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that property reservation with the broker, because you do have more secure legal instruments that you can use for acquiring the property. And, hello?
I was napping.
I think I've just muted. I think whoever that was, just having a chat about dinner.
Yeah. Well, the fourth step is signing the promissory purchase agreement, or as we usually say it here in Portugal, the CPCV. It's an acronym. It means promissory purchase agreement, and that's a contract that the buyer and the seller sign, and they do promise to sell the property and to acquire the property under certain conditions with a certain deadline, and having a down payment, usually 10 to 20%, but it does depend on the conditions accepted by the seller and by the buyer. The final step is the deed, or the closing, as some people say in South Africa, I think. And once you do the closing, all the documentation from the property needs to be in good working order. Everything should be verified beforehand, before you go to the deed. And as soon as you sign the deed, you hand over the banking check, and you receive the keys of the property, and it's yours. But we'll address the specifics on all the points. But in my opinion, it's possible for a client to come to Portugal, have an IF and a bank account opened already, transfer the funds before he even reaches Portugal, browse around, select a property, and then just say, well, Daniel, I want to buy that property and I want to leave in the next day. And that's totally fine. We usually do that for our clients. We have a POA, a power of attorney, for one of our lawyers, and the lawyer will represent the client on the promissory purchase agreement and on the deed. Usually the promissory purchase agreements here in Portugal are done in Portuguese, because that's the law of that's the law in Portugal. The contracts need to be in Portuguese, but for foreign clients, so they know what they're signing and they need to agree on the contract, it's usually drafted a contract, a bilingual contract in Portuguese and English, so people know what they're signing. But do bear in mind that's the if any discrepancies between the Portuguese and the English version, the Portuguese version is the one that courts will go to if something goes wrong. I think I just summarized it. I don't know if we do have any questions that we can start answering,
oh, yeah,
or I'll
absolutely.
go to the specifics. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we can.
let's fire away then.
Well, the point that I wanted to reiterate was about the reservation and trying to avoid it. That's really good advice, I think, and that's worth knowing, that you don't have to make a reservation, and your advice is to avoid that. On that same sort of note, Anna and Roger are asking, I've heard that when you started to talk to one real estate agent, you need to continue with him or her. I think that's just a cheeky estate agent, isn't it, saying that? That's not actually the
well, it's not mandatory, especially for the people that are buying. You can have as many as real estate agents as you want. It's not advisable because it gets a bit messy, but it's up to you. If you can manage all the visits and all the contacts, you can have as many real estate agents as you want as a prospective buyer. As a seller, if you do sign a contract that is an exclusive contract, then you are stuck with that real estate agent for 6 months, a year. It will depend on the terms and conditions of the contract. But usually, exclusivity only happens on the seller side, and if he does sign that contract. If he doesn't sign any contract of exclusive rights to promote that property, then it's not exclusive, and he can the seller can work with anyone that he wants.
That's interesting. Why would a buyer sign an exclusive contract with an estate agent? What would be a reason to do that?
It's not common, and I don't see it happening. I don't see any reason for it to happen, because there is no point in having just one real estate agent and being exclusive with them. It's a bit pointless in my perspective.
Okay, fair enough. All right, we do have a question from Patrick. Thank you for that. Just went through the final deed and have 2 questions for Daniel. After the final deed, and this will make more sense to you, I hope that it will to me. Number 1, the certidão permanente, and number 2, caderneta predial.
The predial, yes. Okay. So those are the 2 main documents that demonstrate who owns the house. Okay. Certidão permanente is the land registry, and it's an online code that you can verify on a website, on the land registry website, and it's all updated. So when you access that code, you have instant information on who owns that property at that moment that you consulted the key or the code. And it allows the prospective buyers to see if any pending registries are to be done, and if the house has a mortgage, if it's pawned, if it has any problem that it's registered on the property registry. So it's the main document for a property is certidão permanente. It's not the actual deed, because the deed only states that the property was sold on that specific day. So if you sell the house on the next day, it won't come on that deed that you have on your hand, but it will come on certidão permanente. It will have that track, that registry. The other, the tax registry, the caderneta predial, is only the tax registry. In that document doesn't demonstrate ownership or property ownership. It just demonstrates that someone is paying the tax and who is paying the tax, actually. So usually the 2 documents need to match up. The property owner on the land registry should match the tax registry, the person that is paying the tax registry. So if the 2 are not matching, something strange is happening, or the tax registry was not updated when it should, and that should be looked into before acquiring the property. So the certidão permanente in the caderneta predial, the land registry, and the tax registry should match the names of the property owners. If they don't, something might be happening, but as long as in the certidão permanente and the land registry everything is okay, it's just a question of updating the tax registry.
Perfect, thank you. I'm sure that helps Patrick there. And Anna very kindly has put your email address in already, Daniel. So you can find that from the chat there, daniel.reis at reispellicano.com. And the promise she's made on your behalf is that you'll reply within 48 hours. That's fantastic.
That's what we try to do. But sometimes it's not easy when, especially when we do these webinars. There's a lot of people that just have some questions, some doubts, and the emails do pile up. But feel free to email me if you have some specific doubts. I'll try to answer back at you in 48 hours. And I'll be delighted to assist anyone that needs to acquire property here in Portugal.
That's wonderful. And of course, our premium members get 10% discount off your service with our connection with you. Legal fees including citizenship, real estate, tax law, golden visa contracts, corporate law, and foreigners law. Patrick's just got a supplementary question to that one, and thank you for that answer. The thing he's asking is how long should he wait for the caderneta predial to be registered?
Well, it's usually something that I do past 1 or 2 days after a property is acquired for my clients. So if things were normal and the public services were fully opened before the pandemic, what I usually do is on the same day that the property is acquired or in the 48 hours after the property is acquired, I just pick up the deed and go to the tax authorities department and say, well, a client of mine just acquired this property, please register the tax on his name. Mm-hmm. This is important because if the registries match up and if the person wants to sell the house in the near future, it's quite important to have that updated. And it's supposed, the situation in Portugal is that once you do a deed, the notary should communicate the property acquisition to the tax authorities. And they say that they do that, and I do believe notaries that I work with, but the situation is that if you don't pick up the deed and go directly to the tax authorities department, that communication from the notary, it doesn't have an effect in 6 months, a year, and you just wait too long, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense because you need to either or start paying the tax on the property or either request to be exempt of the municipal tax on the first 3 years, depending on the conditions. And the tax registry should really be updated. Otherwise, it can be tricky for foreign clients.
Okay, brilliant. And a quick question from Jenny and George before we go into some other things to consider before acquisition. What's your territory? Do you do all of Portugal?
Yeah. We do have lawyers based in Porto as well, and one lawyer that works in partnership with us in Açores, in the islands. And if needed, we do travel around Portugal. Portugal, it's not a big country. It's 700 kilometers from top to bottom. So in 4 hours, we can be anywhere in the country. That's basically it. Because being in Lisbon, it's quite easy to go down south or up north and assist our clients in deals outside of Lisbon. So yeah, that's totally fine and possible.
Fantastic. There you go, Jenny and George. I think you've covered the power of attorney and you being able to sign for your clients. There was a really good consideration about if it's a condominium purchase to request the livro de actas. What would that be?
So once you acquire a property, or once you set up to acquire a property in condominium, and the condominium is the body that governs the building. So any decisions that need to be taken or that need to be taken in a group, because the ceiling of the building needs to be repaired, or you have a gas leak or a water leak in the building, it's up to the condominium. And I do usually advise my clients to request the livro datas, that's the book of decisions of the condominium, to check if everyone is paying the fees in time, because it's important to see if there is one or two people that are not paying the fees that they should.
Yeah.
If any decisions done in the past will affect the person that is prospectively acquiring the house in the future. So let's say that in 2018, the condominium decided that on 2020, at the end of 2020, they will repair the ceiling of the property, of the building, and they say that everyone needs to pay 5,000 euros at the end of 2020. And you acquire the property in August 2020, and then you got a surprise bill of an extra 5K that you were not expecting. So it is important to consult that, and it is important to see if the person that is selling the house doesn't have any debts to the condominium. A few years ago, the debts of the condominium could be either requested to the people that acquired the house or to the people that sold the house. Now the situation is settled in Portugal, and the debts do belong to the person that was the property owner at the time of the debts being done. Okay. So it's not such of an issue nowadays, but still do have a declaration from the seller that he doesn't have any debts to the condominium. That's usually one of the clauses that we do insert in our promissory purchase agreement, that the seller does guarantee that no any liens or encumbrances on the house are due, and they don't have any debts to the tax authorities, municipal authorities, or any other problems that can lower the property value, or that can be a surprise on extra fees paid to the government.
Fantastic. Okay, yeah, and you're checking that also that all the services have been paid for.
Yeah. Well, that's not the service provider is not that important, because it's in the name of the person that hired the services, and it doesn't belong to the house. So if the seller has 500 euros of debt to the electricity bill, it's not up to the buyer, the person that just bought the house, to pay that debt. So the services are all right. You don't need to worry as much as the condominium. The condominium is a big worry in my perspective. Okay,
that's understandable. And and you want these detailed ideally in the promissory purchase agreement, that there aren't debts, condominium debts and so on. It should be guaranteed by the seller in the CPCV. If you could remind us what that is, that'd be great. That the house does not have any liens or encumbrances, like a hidden rental agreement. What are these other things hidden in the long grass, possibly?
Well, sometimes people do live in a house for a long time, and they have rental agreements that are not registered in the tax authorities. And if someone, this already happened, unfortunately, a foreign person comes to Portugal, sees some pictures of a house, wants to buy it, and they just do a quick visit on half an hour. They close the deal, and at the end of the day, the property was just sold with someone living over there, and you cannot take full possession of that house, because the house where people live in Portugal, they are protected by law. If you live in a house, a duly expulsion process in the court needs to be taken out against that person that was renting the house, and this does take time. So it's not something that should be taken lightly, and this needs to be inserted in the promissory purchase agreement, just to guarantee that you'll not have a surprise tenant at the end of the day when you purchase the house.
Absolutely, that's pesadilla stuff, isn't it? Nightmare stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yes, wow. Okay, so great advice there. Interesting to note as well. No payments in cash are allowed, so you can't turn up with your suitcase full of notes.
No, because the property tax here in Portugal is paid with the value of the property. So if you pay 200K, 200,000 euros to acquire a property, you will pay the tax correspondent to that value. If you did a deed of 150K, but you paid under the table 50K, that would be just outrunning the fiscal system. So that's not possible here in Portugal. And they say that no payments above 3K, 3,000 euros are allowed in Portugal in cash. And for property purchases, all the payments need to be traceable. So this is correlated as well with the Money Laundering Act. And everything needs to be paid or either wire transfer or wire or banking check or any other means of payments that is traceable. Especially because once you go and do the deed, the notary will ask, well, how much is the value of the house? How much is the amount that you're going to pay? And what payments have you done already? And if you did, let's say, 5 different down payments of 10K, that is quite common because some people have a limitation of 10K here in Portugal of wire transfers per day. So if you do 10 payments, those 10 payments will need to be reflected in the deed. And you'll have to have the dates of the payments, the bank account of origin, the bank account of the destiny of the payment, and that will be in the public deed, so it's public access documents, and it's to avoid, of course, money laundering in Portugal. And it does make sense. It does make sense.
Sure. So paper trail is required for
Yeah.
that. Excellent. Okay.
It is.
Question from Anna and Roger. Are there any special rules or laws that apply to buying ruins?
Indeed. Sometimes buying a ruin, it can be interesting because especially if the house was built before 1951, you don't have what we call here in Portugal the license to use, because the building code in Portugal was only approved, the first one was only approved in 1951. And before that, all the houses that were built, the government said, well, this is already as it is, well, let's take it as it is. So all these houses are approved without a building code. So if you do buy a ruin, at least with a good degree of certainty, you can rebuild that ruin into the same area of the ruin. So if the ruin has 200 square meters, you can build those 200 square meters. In some situations, if you do request a permit to the municipality, you can maybe add a top layer in the house, so one extra floor, or in some situations, acquiring a ruin and investing on that property, it may be beneficial tax-wise, but this needs to be looked into first before doing any actual deals. But yeah, acquiring a ruin, it may be beneficial tax-wise, and in some situations it's good because you don't need construction permits to renovate that property. You can, as long as you keep the original plan of the house, you can renovate it entirely inside the house.
Thank you for that. And further too, from Anna and Roger there, is it okay to build smaller than the ruin and use other construction material in terms of insulation and windows, etc.? Or do you have to build it in the original style?
Well, as long as the original square meterage is compliant with, so you're not adding any extra meterage, it's all right. Yeah. And yeah, of course, you can put new windows with new specs. You don't need to insert the old windows of wood and single pane windows. So that is totally possible, and it's actually desirable. Sometimes you may have some limitations in colors. You should not, or you may not apply some colors. Regarding the building materials, it will depend if the property is on some specific areas or not. If it's on a normal area and you buy a ruin, you can use whatever materials you want. If you buy the ruin on some specific areas in Portugal that are protected by law, then you may probably need to use those materials or use the same materials or construction materials on the outside, so the aspect, the look of the house is the same on the township. So no bright colors and things like that. But on the interior, usually you can do whatever you want. It's not difficult to renovate a house and to have an old house on the outside with the characteristic and the charisma of an old house, and on the inside you'll have a brand new house. So that's possible. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you can't be ruining a schist village with a new finish
Yeah,
outside.
that's it. That's it. If you go to Piodon, you'll need to stick with the schist, otherwise you'll get in trouble. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, and this really comes to consulting the local municipality Cameron, isn't it? Mari asks, is there a general rule for expanding dwellings, building onto your house or building separate units for B&B, for example? Does it vary by region, district, on or how much land the home is on? I guess a bit of both, maybe.
Yeah. You're totally right. It does vary according to the municipality where you are inserted. So the rules, construction rules do vary from municipality to municipality. And if you want to add extra buildings to the plot of land that you have, you will need to request a permit from the municipality prior to the construction, prior to the start of the construction. Usually what we do when we're considering plot of lands with some construction or with prospective construction without anything on the plot of land, we do what we call here a previous request to the municipality and say, well, I have a plan on this 1,000 square meter terrain to build a 200 square meter house. Is it possible or not? And they'll say, in principle, it's possible. You can build into this ratio, and but do approach us with a final project, and we'll decide on it. So you have this initial request that you can have a general idea what is the ratio of buildings that you can have on that specific plot of land. That's according to the PDM, the Plan Diretor Municipal. It's the municipal plan of construction. And if you go with the ratio of the municipality and if you follow the guidelines, construction in Portugal, it does take time, especially because of the construction companies, but it's possible as long as you keep everything by the book, it will go smoothly, but it does take time. To build in Portugal, it's not a fast process. You can count from the purchase of the plot of land until you finally have the house fully developed and constructed. I would say a year and a half and 2 years in the good scenario, and worst scenarios it can go up to 3. It will depend on the construction company that you hire.
That's worth knowing. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, that's really good. Questions to come about wooden cabins. As you might expect, that's a lot of people's dream, is to have a cabin, wooden cabin in a rural location, and NHR as well. But before we go there, surveys. Talk to us about surveys, Daniel. Should they be done, and who do we talk to about that?
Well, we do have partners that do surveys. We have an engineering company that we usually refer to once we see that it's necessary to do a survey. So surveys may be necessary once we're talking about old houses to see any hidden problems, any mold problems that can be out of sight. And sometimes in rural areas, all the construction that was developed, it's not registered in the municipality. And if it's not registered, this may be a problem in the future for the person that acquires the property. I've had cases that properties were being pushed to clients of mine that they had serious problems with the registry of pools not being communicated to the municipality and to the tax authorities, of extra buildings that were constructed and were not communicated to the municipality, and they didn't have any project whatsoever. And this, at the end, may end up with people that acquire these properties to be fined by the municipality if they do find out that some part of the plot of land was developed without the necessary permits. And municipalities will say, well, we just saw this building now constructed. We don't know if it was you or the old property owner that did this, so they'll try to find the person that owns the property at the time that they do discover extra buildings constructed. So if the prospective buyer is thinking about acquiring property in Portugal in a rural area, a surveyor is something useful to see the situations, if everything is registered properly and if the building is in good shape, in good working condition.
And of course, it might be a requirement of a lender as well.
Yeah. Well, that's for mortgages purposes, you always need to do an evaluation of the house.
Okay.
It's not a survey, so the evaluation doesn't, it's not fit to discover any problems of the property that you want to acquire, but it's more to see the value of the property, because that will correlate directly with the amount of money that the bank will loan you at the end of the day. So usually in Portugal, for Portuguese people, it does depend. It's 15-20% that you need to have as a down payment. If you are a foreign that doesn't have a 5-year residency card in Portugal and that you just arrived, and if you don't work with euros, the loans will be about 50% of the value of the house. It will depend from bank to bank, of course, but banks are wary of lending money to people that have assets or that receive income on countries outside of the Eurozone because of the exchange rates fluctuation.
Yep.
And it's something to be concerned of, because they do fluctuate quite a bit. And if you receive a good income on your country of origin, but once you exchange it to euros, it may be a risk for the bank at the end of the day.
Okay, fair enough. And so, yeah, going back to surveys, then there is a distinction between a structural report and a market valuation report that people need to be aware of. Right. Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so yeah, living the good life in Portugal, and this idea that the wooden house in a piece of quiet land out in a beautiful middle of nowhere sort of situation. How do you go about getting a building permit for such a project? Where do you begin?
Well, the first thing that that I'll say to any client that wants to buy a wooden cabin is be wary of people that are selling these types of properties.
Oh, okay.
This is because some of them will try to push the idea that you don't need a permit. You will need a permit. So, because they just want to sell. They say, well, you buy a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, you put the house, and that's all right. The municipality will accept the house because it's a wooden house. Lies. It's not true. It's not true. I do the prices of wooden houses in Portugal are interesting, and they may be a good idea, but in my opinion, clients should address or should deal with a good company, and a good company will have the project in hand, ready to deliver to the municipality. And as it is something standardized usually, and they know the building codes of the municipalities where they'll implement the houses, I would say with a good degree of certainty that you'll have your project approved. Yeah. But you still need to have the project approved. There's a lot of people that think that I'll just put a trailer in my plot of land that I'll buy down south and I'll be all right. Well, you can get fined for it. So building code in Portugal needs you should have your property compliant with the building code, and some municipalities are more lenient and they don't do as many inspections. But if they run out of money, they just go to Google Maps and they start comparing their maps to Google Maps, and they can find some good places where they can do some income and fines that they can apply. So Don't go with people that are selling pre-made houses and telling you that you will not need a building permit. You will need it.
Daniel,
That's my main advice.
Yeah, that is such good advice and a really good reminder to people. So yeah, the idea, I think Fabio is saying the idea of the doce vita is a little bit more complicated than just building your wooden shack in the middle of nowhere. Fantastic. Okay, that's really good to know. And that connects, of course, to Jani's question regarding habitation licenses. That's the same process. Get to your camera and ask, right?
Yeah, well, the habitation license, or licença de habitação in Portuguese, is a license issued by the municipality. So let's say that you just bought a piece of land, you have an architect project on your hand and you want to start building, and the project was approved by the municipality. So you hire the contractor, he starts building the house. When the contractor finishes building the house, the municipality will inspect the property to see if it's up to code and if it's the same thing as it was submitted in the project. So they will compare the project with the end result, and if everything is fine and if the house is compliant to the building code, they will issue a license to use the house, or an habitation license to inhabit the property. Without that license to inhabit the property cannot be transacted, cannot be sold as a property. It can be a plot of land with a house on top of it, but it's not considered a property in the land registry sense of property. So you still have some properties like that in Portugal, people that build the house without respecting the code. And now they're stuck with a big problem of a plot of land with a house built on top that they cannot get the license to use of a house. If someone is trying to sell you a house without a license to use, and the house is after 1951, walk away from the deal, because it's going to be really, really difficult to sell that property down the line. The other situation that I see in the comments here is that AL, for Airbnb and all that.
Yes.
You can obtain an alojamento local as long as you're not in central Porto or central Lisbon, because they have the restriction zones nowadays.
Sure.
With the property ownership of the house, and you'll need to have the license to use of the property. So this is applied, as it's stated in the message, throughout the municipality, and it's a fairly easy process done on a website. So usually it's a government website that directs to the municipalities, and the registry is fairly easy. And the registry is quite important because all the main booking apps are now requesting the alojamento local registration. And if you don't have the number of the registration of alojamento local of AL, you cannot register your property in Booking, Airbnb, and all those platforms. And you do need, it's mandatory by law to have that alojamento local registration done, but it's mandatory as well for the applications to have that registry number. Without it, you will be stuck with not so good sites of developing your property, and you can have not so nice visit from the tax authorities knocking on your door and saying, well, you've been renting the property on Airbnb or any other platform without paying the taxes. And usually taxmen here in Portugal, they're not so nice. So yeah.
That's good to know. Where are they nice?
Well, yeah, it's the two certain things in life, isn't it? It's debt and taxes. So yes, the same happens in Portugal.
All right, inescapable. Don't let that put you off. Next week's webinar is understanding the D7 and a deeper dive into the D7 and knowing about the NHR tax regime. We've got a quick question, if we can, Daniel, here from Joe. Can I ask for some clarification regarding NHR non-habitual resident status? When I make the purchase, I have to choose, or my lawyer has to choose, one of two systems for the IMP duty. The two systems I think are to do with whether the house is in Portugal is to be my main or prime residence. Which one is the right tax payment to be able to get NHR once I've moved to Portugal? I hope everyone kept up with that. I'm sure you know the answer.
Yeah, well, Once you are about to acquire the property, you have two taxes that you need to pay, IMT and IS. Those are municipal taxes, and they are due once you acquire the property. When you are acquiring the property for you to inhabit, for yourself to inhabit here in Portugal, the taxes are a little bit lower. The difference is not that great, but they're a little bit lower. But usually the difficulty that our clients do find out is that sometimes they acquire the property first, and then they can get the residency permit afterwards. If you don't have yet your residency permit, you cannot buy the property, or the first step that you need to do is, with the NIF, you need to become a fiscal resident in Portugal. And you will need to have your residency permit or your registry as a EU citizen, so you can buy the house to inhabit. If you already have a residency permit and you're already a fiscal resident in Portugal, it's quite easy to buy the house with the tax to inhabit, to be your own main residency, and that's not an issue. Usually the issues do start when people are on the process of moving to Portugal, and the first thing that they do is acquiring the property. Then, at the time that they acquire the property, they should declare that the property is for a secondary house. The taxes will be a little bit more expensive once the property is being acquired, but once they can get hold on the residency permit or do the EU citizen registration, they can set themselves up as fiscal residents in Portugal, and this is when the NHR comes up. So the two status are not connected, or acquiring the property is not connected to the NHR. The NHR is connected to your fiscal residency. If you declare yourself as a fiscal resident in Portugal, for EU nationals, it's quite easy. As long as you have a proof of funds here in Portugal, it's quite easy to set up as a EU national here, and you can obtain the NIF already as a fiscal resident in Portugal, and then acquire the property as your main residency, and then request the NHR. But don't worry about it, as long as the property acquisition is done either for your main property or for secondary home, it will not affect your NHR status. What affects your NHR status is if you set yourself up as a fiscal resident. And some mistakes do happen. I don't know if we still have time to cover that up, but the thing that I would like to point out is some foreign clients want to come to Portugal in 3 years, but they come, they acquire a property, and they communicate that acquisition to the tax authorities. Sometimes by mistake, they put themselves as fiscal residents, and they don't even notice. And then in 2 or 3 years, they decide, well, it's time to move to Portugal. I have my property over there. I will request NHR. And then they'll be in big trouble because they have already declared that they were fiscal residents 2 or 3 years ago. And that's a big entanglement to sort out. We've done it already, but believe me, the tax authorities do take time to analyze those processes. So do be wary once you buy a property. If you don't want to be a fiscal resident, be sure that the tax authority person that is attending you, that they know what they're doing. Yes, because if they do change your fiscal residency, that may be a nightmare down the line.
All right, there you go, Joe. I think that's a pretty comprehensive answer to your question. You're right, Daniel. We are coming to the conclusion of the webinar of the call, but I think we can squeeze in some quick questions here about cleaning around your property in relation to fires and fire prevention, protection. It's the responsibility of the property owner, and it's got to be done, right?
Yeah, it's got to be done, especially because the fires of 2017. Now the municipalities are much more intolerant to that, and they will first they will take some pictures and they will notify you to cut down the bushes or the trees that are putting your property or other people's property in peril. And if you don't do it, they'll do it by themselves, and they will present you an FT bill at the end, as well as a fine. So yes, it's the responsibility of the property owner, especially around houses having bushes or big trees. It will need to be assessed if they are in the correct distances. and if you'll need to cut some down.
Great. Okay. Thank you, and quite rightly so, of course. There. Yes. Anna and Roger want to live in a motorhome on the site they buy. Is that good enough as a residence in the eyes of the local authority?
Yeah, if, for instance, the motorhome stays there for a year, you can get notified by the municipality or either to move the motorhome, or they can try to fine you because that plot of land is not to have a motorhome for you to live in. So there are people that do it under the radar, and they manage to do it for quite a few years, but it's not legal. At the end of the day, it's not legal.
Okay, I hope that helps, Anna and Roger. This, with what, 5 minutes to go, this could open a can of worms. But which Portuguese banks do you find the easiest, best for clients to have when purchasing a property outright? So your favourite banks, if you can say.
Well, for my own personal use, I use Novebank, the one that is having troubles, but that was the one easiest for me to have a home loan. So okay, that was my personal choice because it was the easiest one to lend me money. Yeah. For my clients, we usually recommend Millennium BCP. We have just one downstairs our office, and they're fairly easy to work with, and they usually do understand being a foreign in Portugal and what are the needs of a foreign person in Portugal. So we usually do work with Millennium BCP, and we usually do recommend their services.
That's a really good recommendation, because it's more about the branch than the chain, isn't it? Because
definitely.
Yeah, you want to be working with people with experience, and maybe who can speak a bit of English as well, or your language. So go with a word of mouth recommendation on a branch rather than the chain necessarily.
Indeed, that's completely true. Yeah.
Fantastic, and that's the reason for me it's Urubik in my local town, because the people are just so helpful in there, and I think it really does come down to that, and then that's still that's a great thing actually. It's another great thing about Portugal is you still find that banks aren't completely corporate. You can have human relations, as it were. I didn't choose my words very carefully there, but you know what I mean, with the staff in the bank. Okay, Daniel, you've been amazing again as ever. Thank you so much for.
It is always a pleasure.
Great, yeah, great to have you. Very comprehensive. I think we covered everything. And as Anna said there, can get in touch with you. Your email address is in the chat. Yeah. We'll make sure that goes.
Feel free to email me.
Yeah. All right, that's absolutely wonderful. And some thanks already coming in from people, Jenny and George, Marie, Joe as well. So thanks very much. Back to Astrid and Jerry, who I think are going to host a bit of a mingle now.
We will. If anybody wants to hang around, that's fine. But thank you, Daniel. That was amazing. I wish I had known of your services before we bought our ruin and went through a few hurdles, but we got there in the end. So thank you.
Yeah.
So just a reminder: if you're a premium member out there and you want to engage with Daniel, feel free to contact us. You are eligible for a 10% discount on his fees, which is amazing. Thank you. And if you're not a premium member yet, why not sign up and support Expats Portugal? That'd be amazing. But Carl's off to his wine club now. And those of you who want to hang around and have a little bit of a chat, a little bit of a social chat, more than welcome to. But thank you, everybody, for coming.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. And yeah, I need to go and celebrate now, and with an Alentasian Branco from 2019.
Nice.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for your kind attention to it. I'll step out now.